Hello, Steve White, Steve Arts 89. The Star Trek Discovery Season 2 DVD and Blu-ray came out in Australia last month. I managed to get my hands on a copy, not that I paid for one, because I'm not giving them any of my money. Um, and yeah, I had a bit of a look at it. I was really surprised. I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was surprised that initially that the packaging. Now, the Australian version had a slip cover on the Blu-ray, which was just basically the reverse cover, where they put the cover on the back and they put the artwork from the back and made that into a cover. So they did that for the Blu-ray. The DVD was standard. But what surprised me was on the inside there was no episode titles, no information, no artwork, no nothing, just white. And it was a clear case. So you just had this white inside. It really should have been a black case. And I was surprised. I thought there'd be episode titles, the disc contents, the special features, all this. None of it, and nothing on the disc either. I thought the disc would have the episode titles if they didn't have menus or inside artwork or anything. Nothing. And then I actually looked back, and the first season was the same. I just forgot. I probably blocked it out of my memory as best I could. So that was the first thing. So I had a look at it. Now, there were, I think, 10 featurettes. It had all the previews, and each episode had the previously bit from each episode as well on them. And it had all 14 episodes. It only had two. This was the most shocking thing, which I found out a bit before, and I was really shocked. It only had two of the four short treks. Now, unless they're going to release a separate release of all the short treks on one disc or in one package, I don't understand why they would leave any of them off the box set. What other opportunity are they going to have to release it and have it available to everyone? Because not everyone can see them, because not everyone has CBS All Access and so forth. So if they're not going to release them on DVD and Blu-ray along with the episodes, I'm not sure how they're going to get released. A lot of people still haven't seen them. And the ones from this season as well. Some people don't even know that they were just dumped into Netflix. So the ones from the first season are available, and they're dumped in the next Netflix as the in the previews and trailers section, stuff like that. So an interview section. So that was weird. That was my first reaction of annoyance. It's like, well, unless they do a separate release, this pisses me off, because now they're not all going to be available. And they're always going to be a problem getting them if you need them for some reason or want them, although I don't think I'm really going to care. It's not like other Star Trek where I have to have every piece of it, because I'm actually going to watch it and rewatch it. Now, as I said before, they had, I think, 10 featurettes. Two of them were large ones. One was 53 minutes, one was 41 minutes. And the rest were all 5, 10, 15 minutes. So we started off, I just basically had to look through them. The first one was the bloopers, which, they're funny. I mean, I don't have any problem with the actors. It's not their fault, the licensing and creative decisions that were made around the series. And they've done their best to just do their best. And it does make it a bit harder to hate them when you have laughed along with them and watched them backstage and do all that sort of stuff and interviews and stuff. So if you're trying not to hate the series, maybe watch the bloopers before you watch the rest of the show and the special features. But it's just the usual stuff. One part is pretty good though, where the Saurian alien, when he's supposed to sneeze, he sneezed out his false teeth, and of course people are trying not to laugh. It was pretty decent. I think it was like a 9-minute. It was quite a long blooper reel. Now, the first feature that I watched was the design one, which was 16 minutes. Now, most of the mistakes were made in season 1, so there's not a lot in this to hate. Basically, I like the work itself. It's beautiful. Some of it just doesn't fit on the series. Now, all the stuff done for Section 31 does work, because Section 31's evil and they just went with evil. So it works. With a lot of the Klingon stuff, it's all really beautiful work, and it's quite detailed, and they go into all the details of it all. there's really nothing to complain about except mostly the problems that they made in the first season. And the second season, you can see they're still not wanting to totally embrace the original Star Trek, because they have set up this other universe with this other, due to the other license and that. So it's kind of tricky. And as far as the featurette goes, they go through all the details. It's very interesting. I actually watched the whole thing. And like I said, most of the problems and mistakes were in the first season, and they don't really talk about the genesis of anything. They really just talk about the very practical elements of how they made things and designed things. So it's very, so you don't sort of get caught up on the why it's like this or how it's like this. They just talk about how they made it. Now, the same thing with the props. There's an 8-minute featurette there. And the prop guy apparently is a huge Star Trek fan, which would make sense, because the only thing that looks like Star Trek on the whole of Discovery is the props. The phaser and the communicator and kind of the tricorder are the only things, and maybe in the phaser rifle, are the only things that actually look like Star Trek. And again, they don't go into any of the explanations as to why things are different, and nothing like that. It's just purely how we built it. They go into detail. They show a lot of the props up close and things that you don't really see. Like the phaser, the Section 31 phaser is actually different from the other phaser. It looks kind of like the Discovery version of the Star Trek 6 phaser, or the Star Trek 5 or 4 phaser. Actually, I think that phaser started in Star Trek 3, but it was a different one in 6, so it was 2. And they even point out a little feature where the just some little mechanics, so you get to get a good look at some of the small details that obviously you wouldn't notice when you're watching it on screen. Now, the next one was costumes. Now, I think the costumes are beautiful. I think most of the work on the show is beautiful. It's just some of it is absolutely wrong for Star Trek, and that was in the design in the first place. And originally, I really hated the designer. I thought she just had no idea what she was doing, that she created superhero costumes, and I just hated her. And I felt like I couldn't say anything bad about her, because she was a heavy black woman. I'm like, oh, I can't say anything. I'm a skinny white guy, so I say anything about her that sounds anything other than the designs, because I was just saying, I hate her, she's talented, she doesn't know what she's talking about, she's just ruined the uniforms. I was going on and on. And then I'm like, I can't say any of that, because it's just going to be spun. If anyone sees this, and no one sees my stuff anyway, so I'm pretty safe. But, you know, people are just going to just assume all the wrong things. And fortunately, when you get around to this season, you kind of realize that she's done a very good job. And she really was, she could have done a much better job. She could have done a beautiful uniform if she'd been allowed to, but she was told, this is what we want. And the people wanted a stupid superhero looking blue costume. She didn't come up with that herself. Like she made it, but she was just doing, you know, they're just for hire. So a lot of my hatred for her and the costume, because probably the thing I hated the most about Discovery was the costume. And the idea that they somehow, the Enterprise costume had just continued on for 150 years, and they were just all wearing this blue costume, and then it changed later, which is not the case. It was established what it looked like in the cage. So just things like that were driving me mad. And I thought this woman had no talent, was just a hack, and had just ruined everything, and I hated her. And I realized, oh, actually no, she was just doing what she was told. She's actually quite talented. And seeing more and more interviews with her, I kind of like her. She's nice. I feel bad that I hated her as much as I did, but it really was more Kurtzman and the people behind the overall production, not the actual people down on the ground building and making and creating the actual designs and things. So I first just didn't say anything about it, because I didn't want to look bad, and now it's like, well, I don't hate her anymore. So I'm trying to hate the production staff less, since they really, you know, are not to blame. And now we get up to makeup. They did 2 makeup videos. One was a 6-minute one where they just talk about Mary Chieffo and the makeup guy, who's a huge Star Trek fan. He worked on Deep Space Nine, Voyager, First Contact. He even had a Brent Spiner story, which I won't share. But it's amazing how much they talk about the Telosians, yet they don't actually talk about the elephant in the room, which is why they don't look the same, why things are designed. They kept talking about the iconic designs and how great it was to work on the iconic designs. I'm like, iconic makeups. And it's like, yet you change them. They're not the iconic designs. They're not the iconic makeups, and they don't address it. They don't address it at all. They just stick to the practical, talking about the literally how they built them, and how transparent the silicone was, and the problems and all that sort of stuff. They totally avoid all the elephants in all the rooms, and it's interesting. It's kind of fascinating to watch. You're just looking for some hint, some addressing of the elephant, but the elephant just keeps on walking through the rooms and no one says anything. The second one is a lot more. It's 15 minutes long. That one was just 6 minutes. It's 15 minutes where they really just talk about everything. The most interesting thing for me was just the kind of sexist approach they took to the Kelpians, which they often do with aliens, where they had to make the female look more soft and more feminine and not as hideous as Saru does, because he does kind of look like he's kind of a hideous monster, really, as an alien. So they had to soften that for the female, which I think is a bit offensive. They talk about the Klingon hair. They acknowledge that they made the heads smaller, in part to fit the hair, but also obviously they just wanted to make them look less ridiculous. But they didn't want to say that. And they talk about the idea that Kales took his hair and put it in the lava and basically forged a sword which he used to govern or something, or to lead people in unity. So it was a time of unity, so they grew their hair, and just this, they had this contrived excuse for why the Klingons now had hair and why they didn't have it in the first place. And somehow, I guess, they just stopped cutting their hair off before battles. I guess it would be very difficult to cut your hair off and then grow it back and then cut it and grow it, because the Klingons are always fighting. So it's kind of ridiculous, and we said that in the first place. It still is. They didn't find any way to explain it. I'm surprised they actually address it. It's the only thing they did address in all of it. Now the next one's a visual effects one, which is 9 minutes, which is interesting. The most interesting thing was they did let it out that the big asteroid scene where they're shooting for the asteroids and the little glass hamster wheels was actually envisioned in season 1 and planned, and they started working on it before the season had even started, and they'd even written the episode. They just knew this set piece was going to be in the show, and that's how they write. They write backwards, like, oh, we want this great asteroid scene. So they start writing it, and then they write it into the episode and write the episode around it. Instead of, I cannot talk about that sort of stuff, or I will go on. Okay. Now, one of the more interesting ones is the bridge. They have a 10-minute special, because the FX one was 9 minutes. The bridge one was 10 minutes, and they just go about how they actually designed and built the bridge, how it was held off for the last minute. They kept being told, can't make it, then last minute, make it. And they really wanted to, obviously they wanted this thing to last. They wanted it to be around for a series. And they spent a lot of time, they use a lot of interesting materials, a lot of techniques. The technology is so much different from the original series. They almost bag the original series, but the person who designed it does seem to love the original, but she does acknowledge how much more they had to work with. And I don't hate the bridge. There's a few things I think they made that were mistakes, but overall it's kind of the best kind of design job, where it feels like Star Trek out of all the other things in the show, even though it still doesn't look right and there's things that are wrong. Now, the other two specials, the 41-minute one, 53-minute ones, they're all about making the final episodes. Originally, there's a special about the writing of the last 2 episodes. It originally was 1 episode, and then it just got so big they turned it into 2. There's a whole story behind that, but if you're that interested, you can watch it. And the season 2, they're talking more about the characters, the special 2. And it's all about season 2. They talk about the characters, the development, where they were going, and the actors. Pretty much everyone is there. They talk to Michelle Paradise, they talk to Jonathan Frakes, they talk to Alex Kurtzman. Michelle Paradise is the only executive producer pretty much from that whole line of ones that have been kicked out that are still there to talk about the show. It's kind of funny to see her being the one left to talk. There's another executive producer. He's African. I cannot pronounce his name. I'm not going to try to. He talks quite a bit. And that's sort of it. The rest is Kurtzman and the actors. And Rod Roddenberry pops up basically to say that they did a good job of managing how difficult the history was and the fandom and the fans, because we know what we're talking about, so you can't sort of mess with us. He sort of was talking about that. That was interesting. That they acknowledged it as well was interesting. Now, I'm getting towards 15 minutes. I better close off. This one basically is more interesting because it's not just the nuts and bolts. So once you've heard the nuts and bolts, it's kind of, okay, it's done. This is more about where they were going, what they were trying. And basically, they wanted to free Star Trek up from canon. They wanted to open it up and have, you know, a Star Trek that people hadn't seen before and create futures rather than just being stuck in the past. So I sort of get what they were doing. It could have worked. I don't think it's going to work because the way they've done it, they've destroyed the Federation, and I don't see how it's going to go. But this is really just about the DVD package, the Blu-ray package, which are identical. The picture quality is decent for DVD, could be a bit better. Obviously the Blu-ray is great. And there's really not much else to say, just season 3 is coming and I dread it. And I really just wanted to focus on this with just the actual, what the special features package was and the quality of the DVD. And it's good, just like the production is good. The quality's there, the money was there. It's just the management messed a lot of stuff up. So I'm going to leave it there. Feel free to share, comment, like. Sorry, I've been holding that in for about a minute. Hopefully season 3 will be better, but I don't think so. But we'll probably have the same package either way, same quality as we did with season 1. Thanks, bye.